Bone by Jeff Smith. I am well today I'll be recommending Bone. Yes, recommending. I do like Bone, and this is the one full color. This is Bone full color one volume edition because this has been collected on. Originally, this was starting on the 90s, 91. It was published as in a magazine format, like a comic book format, and it was black and white. Then it came a one volume edition, but still black and white. And then Art Spiegelman, the guy who made Mouse, told Jeff Smith, the guy who made Bone, he told him like Bone should be in color, and then it was color. Bone had a 9-volume edition by Scholastic, a Canadian, I think, publisher, and they have this brand called Cartoon Books, and this one is also Cartoon Books. It came now, so 9 volumes, 9 hardcover trade paperback volumes, and then one hardcover edition with this bookmark and this slipcase. Smells good. Yeah, it is a nice edition. So then what we have here is a 1 volume edition, and that's it. So I came to recommend Bone. So I will be talking about a little about who is it for, and if you like this, you will like Bone. If you don't like this, you don't probably like Bone because it will not be changing like at all in style. So first, you open this and you see this map, and it reminds like maps on fantasy books, Lord of the Rings, that kind of stuff. And that's basically it. If you like that kind of fiction, like Lord of the Rings or similar to that, maps and languages. Well, here we don't have languages. Dune, because you have like a messiah, a one who is above everyone because he's the chosen one, then you will like reading Bone. Now, if you also are looking for comics that are for all ages, Bone is the place to start. I mean, on this 21st century, there are a lot of all ages books. Also like young adult books, comic books. It's what I'm talking about. But at the time of Bone, it was pretty weird. And I think that's why this is so popular at first. Like it is dedicated to his wife. Here are the 9 volumes collected, every chapter. And that's it basically. Bone at the time, on the 90s, it was like 14, 15 years took for Jeff Smith to finish Bone. It was self-published, so it was underground comics. Bone is an underground comic, and you wouldn't notice because now it is in color, but at the time it was black and white. It was self-published, So it is underground comics, basically like Robert Crumb, Daniel Clowes, Charles Burns, etc. Chris Ware, but it is from a total different style because it is an all ages story. It is not like that kind of Gen X kind of vibe or Vertigo even, like everything is bleak and that, Vertigo in the 90s, drags and all that. This doesn't have sex, doesn't have drugs. It has violence, but it is not like grotesque or disgusting or over the top. It is not like Garth Ennis sometimes. I'm not talking about Garth Ennis being good or bad. I'm talking about his depictions of violence. It is not that kind of violence, but it is violence, like swords, fighting, and all that kind of stuff. But it is an all ages book. So the plot or the basic premise is these three characters are called Bone, Found Bone, Smiley Bone, Phony Bone, and they have three different personalities. They are brothers, and they were like kicked out of Boneville, so they now are here on the desert. And I'm going to talk about really quick about one thing I really like about Bone, and that is the word balloons and the lettering. You know how the letters change in style. There's sometimes there are some space between them, like here, and you have this kind of lettering that it has a lot of personality to it. You know, a lot. And also the word balloons, they are not always like the same kind of word balloons. And that's something I really like here on another chapters, more on the middle. He keeps doing that, and Jeff Smith. Here there's nothing. Like changing the style of word balloons and using them to serve in the story. So a quick overview. One of the inspiration for Jeff Smith, of course, is like movies, animated movies at the time, Disney movies, and also comic strips like that, newspaper strips, cartoon strips, and basically Pogo on Disney, Mickey Mouse, and Donald Duck. Pogo is the main, I think, reference to him. But whatever, here I have never read this on black and white, but in color it is awesome. I think it is a really great coloring. And it is a book to be read in color. I mean, maybe someday I will be reading it on black and white, and maybe it will be good too, But how did you capture this in black and white? I don't know, but I mean, it's a cool drawing, but here in color, like having this orange, green, blue, brown, really pretty great. So these characters get kicked out, here are some gags, like the winter coming out of nothing. It is a really tender book. Again, the premise is these characters come to this valley by mistake, because they encounter this locust. And on the first volume, we get like a villain, behind the scenes villain, who is this Lord of the Locust, who also has control over these creatures that appear on here, that are the red creatures. They are a comic relief and also are villains. In the story, we have this dragon that helps Found Bone from time to time. So we ask ourselves, who are these dragons? We have this girl. From now on, we'll be seeing just humans. Found Bones doesn't exist on the valley, so they are weird for these people. And we have this girl called Thorn, who is, strong female character. And she has some dreams, some mysteries about her past. She doesn't really know. The dragon has to do with it, maybe. Her grandmother also is like someone who Grandma Ben. She's called, also has something to do with this past. Cool. This one. It has a lot of action, but I have to say, that is basically the plot, and not the plot, but the mysteries that one hopes to get resolved. They get to meet again, the brothers, because they separated on the first issue. And then what we have, it is a long series, and a series that changes not genre, like it is always adventure for me, at least, like this fantasy adventure. But again, Lord of the Rings kind of style. But on the first two volumes, or three maybe, you don't really see a plot. And for example, one of the important aspects of volume 2 is a cow race, because it has to do with the valley people not using money, but doing bets and exchanging things, services, and, phony uses money. The characters that don't look human seem to live, because we never get to see Bonebill on a human world, like the way it works, instead of this one. So what we have, it is basically like a slice of life comic at best on the first volumes. It doesn't seem like there will be a plot when you're reading it, like in the Verges, like on this cow race plot, for example. And Jeff Smith didn't really plan to do that. It was because at the time, the fans, and when they wrote letters, they say they really liked this cow race, and they wanted to see it and see a lot of that themes. And Jeff Smith elaborated on that. And that's basically why we have a lot of that maybe when you read the whole thing, it seems like it is filler. But at the time, it was like fans ask for it, you know. That's a cool, maybe a boring aspect of it, because some people doesn't really like that plot of Bone. They want the meat of the story. They want that defeat the evil, and not this like running around and around and around, going around through that plot. But at the time, the people who were following this series, they really liked that about this series. And Jeff Smith talks about it in the end, because he says that even when Bone was finished, people thought that it was a comic strip, like a funny strip. They didn't really, at the time, I mean like around this kind of this advance in the series, people didn't really notice that Bone was just one big story. And I can see why, because it is not really that until like the end of volume 3 or volume 3, around that. And that's a lot of time. And if you're thinking about publication, it was like 14, 15 years. So again, we have a Von Bone having dreams, like this, and Thorn having dreams about her past. I mean, she thinks are dreams, but it's flashbacks in her mind. And that I don't really want to spoil, but the story has some twists around, but the premise is basically that, like, defeat the evil. And there's a chosen one, and maybe you know who it is at this point, but there is a chosen one. The style of drawing is changing, the character development, it is funny, entertaining, the relationships between characters. Again, we have here like splash page, the valley, and here around volume 4, the story goes full focus on trying to do something, hyping up like a meeting of characters, a fight, and these things happen, and don't happen really in the end. There's like a climax on volume 6. It is a pretty great climax, a pretty great like a joke when you're telling a joke, and I don't know, the end of the joke, it feels like that. Really good in volume 6. And then the series keeps growing, like in tension, in danger. And it is always like the fight between the good and the evil characters, but it keeps just adding. It is like a fake finale, like volume 6. It could have ended there, but it keeps going because there are some twists. And we have this secret order, Thorn gets to use a sword, and here you have like fight. I don't know what volume is this one, but Jeff Smith has a great ability to cartooning. At least for me, he's a great cartoonist. At some point we got a like apocalyptic vibes from this story. End of the world, not everyone is going to survive. The world is going to shit. It happens. It does happen on this book. It keeps being all ages to me, but it does get dark. Like, for the final volume, it is pretty like, sure, there's violence, but nothing really like traumatizing. Dragons, so it is fantasy. If you don't like fantasy and all ages fantasy, you will maybe not like this one, also because it has the aspect of being a funny book. Also, from time to time, Fawny, it is a pretty funny character, a phony character. And there, yeah, I'm sure I will not tell you how it ends, but if you liked what you saw on the pages, you will probably like Bone, So I think I mentioned why it was like a big deal at the time, like underground comic, but not being what was associated with underground comics at the time. There's a timeline of the comic publication and some cool aspects of it, like around 1993, Jeff Smith was already associated, like forming a guild maybe with another cartoonist, like Dave Sim from Cerebus, but they fall out at some point because Dave Sim talks trash about women on Cerebus at one point. Maybe someday we'll be talking about that here, because it is a pretty interesting or weird series. Also, Bone, also what Bone did at the time in the 90s was doing collected editions to attract new readers, because you can jump on issue 33, but what if you want to know what happened before that? And they started to doing trades. Trades, paperbacks, collected editions are common now, but at the time they weren't. So it was like a special series. It made stuff that no one was making at that time. Not that popular. Here winning an Eisner. Image published some issues of Bone. We have here Bone ending, and that edition of the whole story, but on black and white. First trade and hardcover for the 9-volume collection from Scholastic, presenting the 1 volume full, no color, but complete story. And that's when people realized that no, that was before, this was in France, I think, Germany. But when Jeff Smith published the whole thing on one book, people just at that time, and this is him saying that, realized that Bone was just one big story. Before that, it was not like that. Art of Bone and a documentary about Jeff Smith, some spin-offs about Bone, and prose novel, and this edition that I have here. Then it is a cover gallery. And you can see here on the covers how popular was Bone, because at one point it has a cover by Frank Miller, Charles Bess, Alex Ross, even, the Alex Ross. So it was popular at the time. It is popular now. Some people don't really like this, but it is not a bad comic. I mean, you can see it has great cartooning. It cannot be a bad comic, but it is what it is. So, of course, there are people who will not like it, because it is what it is. A fantasy book. I even don't really like fantasy that much, but I liked Bone. More covers. When a book is ending, because every cover is a character. To not spoil and to give the audience like this theories, something dramatic is going to happen, and in the end discover. Okay, so do I recommend Bone? Yes, I think it is a great all ages comic, adventure, fantasy comic. You can read it with your child, you can read it with your son, share the hobby. As an adult, I don't know, if you are single, maybe you don't need to read Bone, you will not really enjoy it that much, but again, depends on the reader. I think I lay out like my secret ancient cultures. I think I lay out like the reasons for why it could be interesting to read for some people. That same reasons could be a reason for you to not read it. But I mean, it's okay. That's why I wanted to make this video, to show reasons or the things I liked about it, talk a little about it, show it, and if you're interested, go look up for it, read it. I think it's on Amazon. I think it is still on Amazon, this edition. But there are a lot of editions available. And Jeff Smith also, he's maybe forever will be his most famous comic. But after this, he made a Captain Marvel comic for DC. He also tried to make like an adult comic. And that adult comic, it is this one, Russell. I think it is called, again by Cartoon Books. It has to do with Nikola Tesla a little bit. Science fiction comic, not that long. And maybe someday a video about it. I haven't read it in a long time. And he's now, I think, making a book about like a caveman. Tuki saves the humans or something like that, like a Kickstarter book. I haven't read it. I think the Living the Line channel has a video on it. I um, haven't given the chance to haven't been given the chance to buy it, but someday maybe. As for now, like this year I read the whole bone. It is pretty long, so maybe it is. I have my doses of Jeff Smith at least for a year. Again, Bone recommended. I always have read it in color, so I don't know if I would recommend the black and white edition. But I guess the experience will be a little different.